This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze Conversations with Eric Teplitz. And Eric, we've been doing this a little over a year now. And I had somebody who said to me, um, you know, doesn't Eric have his own podcast? I know he does. I know I've listened to it. So what are the two of you doing together? And I said, well, let me tell you. I told them that from the first day that I interviewed you and had you on Avoid the Maze, I realized that you had a sense of knowledge that I didn't feel intimidated by, where there are some people, they're knowledgeable and they throw out this author, that author, text upon text. I'm not like that. I pick up information, and if you ask me where I heard it, sometimes I have to go scrolling through my computer to find the notes where I heard it. I just don't memorize those things. But you and I have, at least I think, a very similar belief system across the board. And yet we talk about it differently. And that's why I thought today it would be interesting to talk about belief systems, because some of us don't realize how limited our beliefs are. And then we get out in public, and I know it was easier for me maybe 30 years ago in public to have a conversation and not be afraid I was using the wrong word, or my tone wasn't correct. So I'll give you an example. My older son came in for Mother's Day weekend, and we were sitting, and I don't even know exactly what the conversation was. I know what it was. We were talking about how entertainment today is more insulting than it's ever been before. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, when somebody decides to play a transsexual, but they're really a very straight person, he said, that's not fair to that community. And I said, but it's acting. So all it is acting. He goes, but not to that community. He's making fun. So I brought up, well, what about Al Jolson? He wanted to perform and sing music of the South. He tried it just as himself, and it didn't work. So what did he do? He performed in blackface. It was acceptable back then, but today it wouldn't be. And so all of our little niches, our communities, sort of create these rules that we live by. But are we sure those rules are right? So here I am asking you, as a coach, as a person who I think is really mindful of life, how do we get our belief systems to be accepted? We may not like them, but be accepted by other people so that we don't get hurt saying the wrong thing.
Well, there's a very simple, simple question. It's very simple. Wow, there's a lot of layers to what you shared, and I thought for a moment we were going in one direction about how we were unable to recognize the limitations of our own beliefs, and which is, I think, a universal experience.
Right.
We can't see out of our own worldviews. Our worldviews can evolve and change, and our beliefs can also change, but it's almost impossible to see outside of the container that is our lens of the world. And I just had an experience of this recently, and it never ceases to amaze me. It was a very simple and mundane example. I was trying to I actually visited my mom for Mother's Day.
Oh, nice.
And actually it was really for her birthday, which is just a few days. It was just a few days. This year it was just a few days before, but And there was an issue with her and my dad's TV, and I was trying to help them out with it. I'm not a technical wizard, but it's all relative. I thought maybe I could help them. And I was fixed in my own circular ideas about how to solve this problem. And I just kept, I'm sure you've had the experience where you keep trying the same thing over and over again. And for some reason you think it'll work, it hasn't worked. And yet you keep doing it and you think that somehow maybe it'll work this,
Right.
And I just couldn't see out of this idea that I had about how to solve the problem. I couldn't step out of it. And my mom came in and figured it out like in no time. Just maybe stumbled upon it, maybe because she wasn't as fixated on this way of how it was supposed to be. I don't know, but however she did, she solved it. I was relieved because TV is very important to them, and I might have screwed it up for them. But it was just another example of how we can't see out of our own ideas. Now, you could call it a belief. Yeah, I mean, it was a belief about how to solve a problem or how not to solve a problem. Right. And we literally sometimes we're so stuck in that idea that we literally can't even see that we're stuck in that idea. And because the first step really is that awareness. Awareness is, I think, it's not the answer to everything, but it's the necessary first step. We have to be able to step to the side, to look from another vantage point, to observe ourselves, to see our pattern. It's very difficult to do. It's a lifetime practice. You used the word mindful. You said I was mindful about life. I certainly try. I do my best in that sense, but I'm a work in progress, and it's a lifetime's project, I would say, to increase mindfulness. But another example, I will get back to your
Oh,
question.
no, that's fine. You're
but
doing
another
it.
example, yeah, okay. Another example of this that I'm always, intrigued by is this idea of judgment. And this is connected to what you were saying,
Right.
because as human beings, we all judge. It's just what we do. To expect ourselves to not be judgmental or to not judge other people is an insane expectation. It's simply part of the mechanism that is our evolved brain and mind. It's one of the things that we do. We judge, and it serves a purpose. I mean, there's a certain amount of, you can make a distinction between judgment and discernment. We say someone has good judgment. Really, what we mean is that they're able to discern, in a useful and helpful way. But judging implies, condemnation, right?
Right.
We judge ourselves, we judge other people. We do this constantly. And I don't think it's a realistic expectation that we should just stop judging. We can't. I don't believe we can. So,
right.
And then that's a belief, and maybe I'm wrong. But my point is that what we can do, and what I really am a strong believer in, is we can become aware of when we're doing it, because it's often so unconscious. We don't even realize it. It's just reaction, reactivity, a judgment we make, a condemnation about another person because we don't like the way they behave or speak, or something that we observe about them. And the first step is to simply be aware, and and just realize, oh, I'm judging that person, or even I'm judging myself. And it creates a little bit of space to allow for a different response. It's not like you're going to stop judging, or you can't redo if you've been judging something or someone, you're not going to eliminate it. But if you become aware that that's what you're doing, then you can relax about it a little bit and create a little space around it, and realize, what, I'm making a judgment. Usually there's assumptions involved in judgments, and then you can choose to respond differently. You can choose to say, I'm making a judgment, but I don't have the whole story. I don't have all the information.
Exactly.
Because we rarely ever do, really, if ever. So, yeah, but I just want to bring this back real quick to this, to bring it around to what you were saying about, because the way that you phrased the question to me was, you were asking, how do we, you were implying, how do we basically change other people? That's not the words you used, but you were saying, how can we behave in such a way so as to almost prevent, like, not offend another person, or we don't have any control over how another person perceives us or interprets our behavior. We literally can't. Like, that's not up to us. All that we can do is have an intention and act as best we can in accordance with that intention. And we can also observe what our behavior, the effect that our behavior has on, say, other people. And we can notice that certain things might trigger another person or bother another person. And then again, that awareness, it all starts with the awareness. Then we might choose to interact with them differently. But ultimately, it's not in our control. We we can operate from the most loving space and come with the most positive intention and do our best to behave in such a way as to try to not upset anyone. And by the way, I don't recommend doing this because you'll be so stifled that it won't be authentic.
Well, and the conversation came up with my older son when he was in this past weekend, and we were talking about what words can we use today? What words can't we use today? It's sometimes I get caught thinking, oh, I shouldn't say this, or I shouldn't tell this story. But at this point, I'm going to tell a story that happened with my parents. Oh, this was in the 1940s. Because only my older brother was born. So it was sometime between 1941 and 1945. My parents grew up in basically a Caucasian Jewish community. Right around their community, there were groups of Italians and Polish people, African Americans. And my mother and father always talked about that when there was an American holiday like 4th of July or Memorial Day, all these communities got along very well. They sort of understood each other's dialect just enough to accept each other. But when it wasn't a holiday, everybody stayed in their own little group. Well, in the 1940s, my mother talked about the fact that they used to listen to Amos and Andy on the radio. Now, for those of you who don't know who Amos and Andy are, it was a Black family, okay? And they were funny. That was their intent in the radio show. My mother and father used to listen to them, as did my mother's parents, because they reminded them of their own Jewish family. And my mother would say later in years, I never thought of them as Black. And yet I've made that same comment about certain friends, and I've been told by the African-American community, then you didn't see us at all, which is a sad thing because that's not what I mean by it. I mean, I don't look at and ask, what is your sexual orientation? Where are you from? If we meet and we get along, hey, it doesn't matter to me. But there are certain phrases we can't use anymore, such as, well, I didn't see my Black
I hear what you're
friends
saying.
as Black.
Yeah, you're talking really about political correctness, and it's a complicated topic because, again, we're talking about intention versus effect. And so I said earlier that all we can do is have an intention and act in accordance with that as best we can. Now, there is a caveat to that, and I believe I said something to the effect of observing the effect that our, however well-intended words, actions, behavior has on others, and then adjusting accordingly, being sensitive to the fact that certain ways of being might be offensive to other people. And it's a gesture, it's a gesture of sensitivity and compassion and understanding to then behave in a way that respects the other. So this is not always clear cut because, again, you might feel I've done nothing wrong. I've only been, and yet someone else has been offended. Now, this is a different topic from even what I thought we were discussing. And it's not, I don't think that there's a simple answer other than the importance of dialogue, the importance of listening, and the importance of dialoguing. So if someone has been upset or offended by you, you can then choose to engage with them if you even are aware of that. Like, if it's clear to you, like that someone has been offended, let's say, by something you've said or done. And all that you can do is listen to them, hear them out, and then say, thank you for explaining to me the effect that my words had on you, or that my behavior
Exactly.
had on you. And then make a point. We're not going to be perfect. We're human, but make a point of honoring that as best we can, and so I think that all that anyone can expect of another person is, to be treated with respect. Expect, but the best I think that we can expect from others is to be treated with respect and a loving and respectful intention, and coming from a place, because I think that we will overlook some clumsiness on the part of another person if we know that their heart is in the right place, or if we
Exactly.
know that they're, but we might not know, especially if it's a person we don't know that well. So, this is a very complex subject. It's not something that I am an expert in. Um,
But it's
and
something that we all live with, and that's why I
yeah,
thought it was important to talk about it.
yeah.
Because I
And also to understand things like privilege. That's very important. Um, to understand that why something that might feel or seem innocuous to you could be hurtful to another person.
right.
Usually that has to do with a certain amount of privilege that, let's say, as white people, we enjoy without often even realizing it.
Exactly. Yep.
So this is again, I think it's an ongoing education, and an ongoing project, and mindfulness is very much a part of it, and awareness. So yeah, but I think it really stems from that kind of golden rule idea of, just basically doing unto others. Now, again, even that can get dicey because some people don't want to be treated the way you would want to be treated.
Oh,
So it's so
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
so the spirit of the golden rule about, essentially, uh, being as kind and respectful and, treating others with just a certain amount of decency and kindness and respect, the way that we would want to be treated with the same kindness, decency, and respect. And the specifics of that are going to maybe vary person to person, but that is the essence of it, as far as I can understand.
Sure. Well, one of the things I've noticed that during the pandemic, I believe more people were willing to initially be more tolerant, and then they became more respectful, and they became more helpful. Now that we're sort of weeding ourselves out of the pandemic, um, I see people going back to
Hmm.
their previous position. It's a me world.
Hmm.
Well, to some degree, yeah, you have to take care of yourself first. I get that, because if you're not healthy, if you're not mm, aware of what's going on, um, you can not only hurt yourself, but hurt others. So yes, it does start with ourselves, but we have to look out for each other. And uh, that was the conversation that we were sort of having with my son at the time, that I've just seen, especially in my own community. Whereas 2 years ago, if there was a piece of, garbage sitting out on your lawn, and we live in a condo, somebody would just pick it up and throw it away. Now, if there's garbage even on their front lawn, they decide when and if they want to pick it up. And I don't know what has happened. And that's the thing that was asking my son, that we've taken certain things that we were brought up and learned to do that was so important to us, we got kinder for a while. And now it's, I need to survive. And
Yeah, I don't know if it's as cut and dried as that and straightforward and simple as that. I don't think it is personally. Like, I think context is everything. And I think also that multiple things exist at the same time.
sure,
So, what's, I don't have any experience visiting the East, the Far East, like, Asia. But I've heard from people who have spent time in Japan in particular that there's such a different way of being, such different cultural norms about this idea of what's respectful and what's, you know, um, and that is very tied to culture and place. So what is considered polite in one area geographically or culturally might be considered unbelievably offensive in another. So, and that goes not just for different cultures and countries, but certainly within our own very complex, very diverse, um, culture that we, under the umbrella of, let's say, America, right? I mean, there's so many different environments and places and cultures and norms within this country alone, within even a single individual state in this
right.
country,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
even bring it down to like neighborhood, right?
Yep.
So I don't think it's as simple as it used to be one way and now it's another way, and then it reverted to that way and now it's, you know what I mean? I think that it's an ongoing um mixture of things that is always changing. I think of it almost as like if you remember ever look into a kaleidoscope,
Oh, yeah.
where everything is just in flux, everything is in motion, everything is changing. I think that is the nature of this experience that we call life. I think that is really like the nature of it. The fundamental nature of it is that things are constantly in motion, constantly in flux. They're changing. And what do? We judge those changes. Getting back to the first part of this conversation, we judge them. We say these changes are good, those changes are bad. Um, and and there isn't a consensus, by the way,
Oh,
as
there
to
never
what.
will be.
No. So, you know, um, so I see it as, and I think that, yeah, I mean, I don't know what, if you even asked a question, um, but that's just my response to what you shared. You know, in that things are changing, and sometimes and things do not always progress in a forward direction, as you know.
Absolutely.
So,
I
yeah, I think that it's an incredibly difficult, challenging thing, uh, being human. And one of the things that makes it that way, one of the many things, is our interactions with other humans, getting along with each other. And if you think about it, like, I'll give you a positive spin on this, because there's so much negative. We're overwhelmed with negativity in the media and the news,
right.
right? And that is a distorted picture. But you take in enough of that, and you start believing that this is just like, this is the way things are. Like, everybody hates each other. um, so I think I lost my train of thought. Um, yeah, I did. That
Well,
happens.
but
Oh,
going
I'm sorry. I'm
back,
sorry. I got it. I
yeah,
just
okay.
finished. So it was this idea of the difficulty of getting along with each other, and the positive spin I wanted to put on it, as extreme as it may sound, or silly as it may sound. So we've had, there's some 8 billion approximately of us on the planet. And this is not to discount all of the conflict and tragedy and awfulness that goes on. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that the news disproportionately puts its spotlight on that, and that's what is attention grabbing, and that's what draws eyeballs, and that advertisers are looking for. It's a whole thing. But if you think about it, we have had the ability to basically destroy all human life on Earth for the, what's it been? I don't know, close to 80 years now or so. Like we've
right?
had the technology and capacity to completely obliterate ourselves from the planet. And we haven't done it yet. I think that's pretty good.
Well, you know what? I have to agree with you.
And also, if you think about really just like the amount of interactions that take place on planet Earth between humans on a given day, on balance, people are getting along with each other well enough that there isn't total chaos and anarchy. Are there problems? Oh, for sure there are problems. But it's a mixture, and that's what I'm really keep returning to, is that it's a mixture, and it's an ongoing challenge to make peace with ourselves during the course of our lifetime. That's not easy. Make peace with life itself, and to try to get along and have constructive relationships with each other, because we are fundamentally social creatures and we are inherently interdependent. So we need each other, like it or not.
Absolutely. It's quite interesting. And that's why sometimes I love when you hear the subject one way and you take it, because it opens up an even bigger dialogue than I was expecting, but so needed. When you look at what you just said, how many of us are on this planet, how many of us, through work or, just socializing, have been to different cities, towns, states, countries, okay? And we've interacted, and most of us have probably interacted positively, okay? Maybe it was expected, maybe it wasn't a joyous positive, but it was positive. Um, and when we think about that, yes, we are wonderful, nice, kind individuals. And I think that's what most of us really are striving for. But again, as you said, when you are bombarded, whether it be on Facebook, that all these people are so happy, but oh, I didn't experience that. And then all of a sudden you feel like, what's wrong
Yeah,
with me?
that's a whole
Right.
other conversation, is social
But then
media,
you
right?
take
But
that, and then, like you said, you take the news and you're watching the news, and it's like, you know, floods and
yeah, because day to
snow and
day kindnesses and pleasant interactions between people are not newsworthy. Those things are not considered newsworthy, but they're just as real as all of the horror that we're subjected to.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so that's why I try to, and it's by the way, I understand this intellectually, and I've just articulated it to you, but it doesn't mean I'm invulnerable to, I mean, I'm just as vulnerable to these and sensitive to um the fright that is really perpetuated by what the media focuses on and presents to us. And I have my own, my own attempts to create boundaries in terms of taking in, because I want to stay informed. And there's a point at which information no longer becomes helpful and actually becomes maybe
Right.
harmful. So it's a very tricky thing to navigate. But yeah, I would say, call me an optimist, call me idealistic, call me whatever you want. You can call me Eric. I don't care. But I think that on balance, I think generally, overarchingly, people are we're a mixture of things. We have some noble impulses, we have some awful impulses. I mean, but on balance, I think people really do just want peace. They want to get along. And the thing is that as different as people can be from each other in terms of, let's say, political orientation or cultural background or whatever, the fundamental human desires, I think, are pretty simple and similar. People want to be loved, they want to be accepted, they want to be respected, they want to feel that they belong, they want peace, and they want fulfillment and a certain amount of autonomy, like freedom to have some say over their destiny. And that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Like that's pretty, and so, positive social connection, obviously, which is kind of already incorporated into that, just like, positive social relationships and feeling loved and being loved and being able to love. Like that's it. Like that is really what pretty much everybody wants. I'm sure there's going to be some exceptions, some outliers, but that's what most people are aiming for. And I think that, you know, we have a lot of challenges
We do.
individually and collectively. And, all we can do is take it one interaction and one step, literally and figuratively at a time. And there are a lot of, I think it's also important to acknowledge the positives along with the negatives. We shouldn't ignore or shut out or dismiss the negatives or somehow like deny them. No. But we also should be make it a point to observe the positives in ourselves and other people. And also, like, so many things are mixed bags. Like, we talked about social media just fleetingly and in brief, and you could speak of technology more broadly, and you could easily make a case for it being terrible, but it's also amazing and wonderful. So it's both.
It is.
The fact that we're having this conversation and able to do this, though I cannot, I like pinch myself every time I do my podcast. I'm just astounded at how such a short amount of time in the past, what I'm doing would not have even been possible. But
Exactly.
we have access now to technology at a at such a affordable cost to be able to, I can interview people literally wherever they are in the world, just about, and I do, from my own home and wherever they happen to be, and we can see each other, we can communicate. It's not the same as in person, but my goodness, it's pretty astounding that we can have these dialogues and communications, and I can, do everything from reach out to them initially to publish the finished edited podcast in video and audio formats and distribute them online. And like the whole process can be done from my home
Right.
at very minimal cost. And that's astounding. That is truly, I mean, like I said, I never cease to be just blown away by that. So, yeah, it's a mixture. And the challenge, I think, for all of us is to not ignore the negative, but to see the positive and see the positive potential in things. And, one of the most challenging things is to take difficulties and challenges and tragedies even, and to try to fashion them or, make something positive out of them, since we wouldn't choose them. But if, I just watched, I know I'm all over the place here, but I just last night watched the Michael J. Fox documentary, which is just
I've
came
heard
out.
it's, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. What a story, what a life of highs and lows. But the way that he is dealing with Parkinson's disease and has been for decades now, and the grace with which he's dealing with such an unbelievably brutal, challenging affliction that no one would want, no one would
Exactly.
opt to have, and to be able to find, and he has an incredible support system, obviously, and incredible resources, but yeah, just to decide to try to make something positive out of the situation, and to maybe help other people who are going through it, and maybe ease their suffering now and in the future by the foundation that he's set up, by the attention he's brought to the disease, just by the way he chooses to conduct his life. It is, it's really, I don't even, I don't know what else to say about it other than, this is the challenge of being human. We each have our own difficulties and challenges that we would never predict often, and could never foresee, and would never sign up for. And yet here we are. And all that we can do is make the best of our the hand that we're dealt, to use a cliched metaphor.
And the wonderful part about all this technology has really developed the coaching business,
Mm.
because you just may feel like you're in a rut, okay? And it doesn't feel medical. It doesn't feel truly psychological. It just feels like I need to know how to take one step to the left. I always go to the right. And when I go to the right, I fall down. I have to get up and I have to keep trying. How do I move to the left? And coaching doesn't tell the individual how to take that step. Coaching will throw out ideas of, how do you think you can do it any better? How do you want to go to the left rather to the right? I know the other day, I'm dealing with a pinched nerve, and it's either in my arm or my leg. And when my son saw that I was having trouble getting out of a chair, he said, "Oh, Mom, no, just sit down. I'll go get it for you." And I looked at him and I said, "No, I can do it. It'll be painful getting up. Once I start moving, I'm basically okay." And I said to him, "You know, when I first got this pain, I was told, just sit and rest, use ice, use heat." And when I saw after a day or two that wasn't working, I started reaching out to others who have had a similar experience to find out what worked for you, what didn't work for you. And again, there was that communication, and it wasn't about telling me to go see a doctor for something, that maybe would work, wouldn't. It was about the basics, do you just sit around and wait for this to get better, or do you get up and move around?
Yeah. Right.
And you know what? It was 50-50 split.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you,
But
two of the best words in the English language ever strung together are
yeah,
whatever works.
yep. And that's but I just wanted to hear that what I was going through really is a very normal thing.
Right.
And my son looked at me and he goes, "Mom, my heart just goes out to you." And I said, "It's life and it will get better. And I know that." And this morning I sent him an email and I said, "I woke up this morning and I could walk across the floor and I can lift my arm." I said, "I don't know what I did." And he wrote me
And
back and he goes, "Well, my heart went out to you the other day." And I said, "Well, that's nice. That means that you love me and I care about that." But we have that ability to look at all different sides of an issue and make the decision that is best for ourselves. And if we
Yeah.
can't do that alone, we can get the guidance, whether it be from a partner, from a coach, from a podcast, whatever it takes, we can make ourselves enjoy our life. And I think that's important, because with our belief systems being different, we could sit there and argue with each other day in and day out, and nobody would be happy. And there is a lot of happiness in this world.
Hmm.
And I love when you smile. It's just like, the world is.
Thank you for that. That's very sweet. Yeah, I think, listening to each other is important. I think one of the main benefits of coaching is just to help us see outside of our own circular and limited patterns and thinking. And none of us are immune to that, so yeah. And as you say, you can be coached. It doesn't have to be a formal coach. You can be coached by anyone who takes the time to listen and offer help and an attention and maybe another perspective. And again, a benefit of technology is that we have access to so much information that we really didn't not so long ago. And we can look up, hey, what do I do when I, have this problem, and get other, people's experiences and ideas, and then try things and see what works for us, because it's, to your point, that really is, that is the thing that we don't really know until we've tried, and what worked for someone else may or may not work for us. And that's where experimentation and exploration is so important. And just one other thought that I had when you describe, you could get up and lift your arm, that I just thought to myself, these are the things that we take all of these things for granted until we don't have them or can't do them, or,
Yep.
So that is just interesting as well, right? Like the simple things that can give us so much joy, like being able to walk without pain or get up from a chair without pain. We don't even realize how fortunate we are until we can't do that.
Well,
Anyway, it's part of the human condition again.
When I was down in Texas taking care of my son, his apartment has no elevator, and all the apartments have like loft ceilings. So I mean, from the first floor up to his floor on the third. So it's a straight stairway up. And I had to walk those stairs 2-3 times a day, and I was having a real hard time with my leg. But I figured out how I could do it. I did it. I figured sometimes halfway through this, walk up the steps, I just stood there, took a deep breath, and then kept going. And when I mentioned it to another friend of mine, they said, "Oh my God, Karen, that was horrible." I said, "No, it wasn't." I said, "I could do it. It's not that like I had a broken leg,
right,
and I was making it worse walking up the steps."
You just had to do it on your terms, and
Exactly.
respecting your body, and right.
And I said, and that was just so encouraging to me, that if I was going to have this pain for the rest of my life, I could still walk. I could still do things. And I got those beliefs from my parents. I saw what they did. I saw what they muddled through. And, if I said I can't do it, my father would look at me and he'd say, "You can't or you won't."
Mhm.
And
That's a big one.
usually when I thought about it is, well, I won't. And
Right.
he wouldn't accept that.
Yeah, and as adults, our one of our many challenges is to take note of the beliefs that we've inherited. And again, sometimes it's really hard to even just
Right.
realize that, right? And then choose, does this one still serve me? Is this or not? Because
Exactly.
some of those
Exactly.
beliefs that are gifts that we've been given, and some of them may have been gifts at a particular
Different time.
stage of life. So it's a constant, reassessment. Does this belief still serve me? Yeah. And then it's every day is an ongoing challenge. I'm
Absolutely.
convinced, by the way, for anyone alive on Earth.
Well, you know what? If you didn't have a challenge, my father used to say that it was part of a poem. I believe it was called "Why Worry?" And there's a line in it: "Either you live or you die." And I remember we were going on vacation someplace and we were stuck in traffic. And my older brothers and we were in the back seat, of course, complaining. We just wanted to get to where we were
Are we
going.
there yet? Are we there yet?
Yeah. And my father said, "Why are you worrying?" And then he recited this poem. And again, I always remember that last line: "Either you live or you die." And it was like, you know what? I want to live. So I'm going to complain less and just go on living. So again, this was a great podcast with you. I appreciate it. All the information regarding Eric and his website will be in the show notes. Feel free to go listen to his podcast because he has some excellent, excellent guests.
It's called The Person You Want to Be.
And don't we all want to be that person? Have a great day and happy almost summer. It's beautiful outside. Take care now.
Thanks so much, Karen.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.